Hi, my love. Welcome to the Gemma Hanley podcast. My name is Gemma. I'm your host. This is the space where I have honest conversations about overcoming anxiety and overwhelm so that you can calm your nervous system and feel really confident and happy and calm from within yourself. Along the way, I share my own stories of holistically healing 23 years of anxiety and depression myself. And so if you're a woman seeking answers to perfectionism, people-pleasing, burnout, resistance, you may love, you're in the right place. Let's do it. Let's begin. And before we begin, I want to pay my respects and acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land upon which I am recording from, which is the Gubbi Gubbi tribe. And I want to extend that acknowledgement to their elders, past, present, and emerging, as well as anybody of Indigenous or Torres Strait Islander heritage watching this replay. Hey, lady love, welcome back to the potty, being the Gemma Hanley podcast. I'm excited for this conversation. It's one that has been brewing for a little while, which we're probably going to cover why that is as we get into the conversation. But before we do, I feel like to balance out all of the complaining that I did over the summer of how sweltering my podcast recording conditions were, I just need to put in a little tidbit here and say they are ace right now, like 20 out of 10 on point. I am in my second year of living on the sunny coast now, third year in Brisbane, or third year in Queensland, rather. First year was in Brisbane, which, by the way, is that even right? 2022, 3. Okay, going into my third year. Yeah. I was going to say that's gone fast if it's 3 full years going into my third year in Queensland. And I can officially say autumn is by far my favorite. Summer feels like an endurance sport. Don't love it. Might be making some tweaks to my summer situation next year. But autumn is stunning and I'm here for it. It's very, very comfortable recording conditions. So just balancing out all the complaining with the gratitude and appreciation, which is actually a fun fact about me. Yes, I will complain, but I will equally, almost annoyingly, talk about how much I love something and how amazing something is and how incredible and how in awe I am of something on the other end of the scale too. So I balance it out, all right? But let's dive in. We're here to talk about how to stop mindlessly scrolling and become more productive. And if you've been here a little while, you hang out with me in this space, it will not surprise you whatsoever that I'll be approaching this conversation from 2 angles. One angle being the mindset, which is looking at how we can be more curious rather than conclusive. It's looking at reframes, visual prompts or cues, which I'm actually a huge fan of and I use all the time. I like to rotate through how I'm using those. Pattern interrupts, like using things like a routine or an alarm, etc. So yeah, we're definitely going to cover the mindset side of things, and I'm going to give you lots and lots of practical tips, practical tools that I personally use and live by and find really, really useful. And of course, we are definitely covering the nervous system side of mindless scrolling as well, because whenever that is showing up, it is a stress response to what is showing up in the nervous system, right? So whether that is that you're having really stressful thoughts or you're reacting in a way or having in a dialogue that you really don't like, maybe you don't even like the person that you're being, the thoughts that you're having, how critical or judgmental you're being of others or of yourself as well. Maybe there's a situation that you just want to disconnect from. You just want to avoid it, get out of it, disassociate it, not have to think about it. Maybe you're feeling really paralyzed and numb and like sluggish and lethargic and stagnant and stuck, Yeah. And it's like your battery pack has been taken out and you're just like, oh, why can't I be bothered doing anything? Or maybe it is that you're really struggling with emotions in your environment, right? Whether that is from the perspective of you feel responsible for or guilty about the emotional experience somebody else is having, or you're really struggling to regulate yourself in their explosive or outwardly expressed emotional state as well. And all of these are just like a small sample of nervous system stress responses that can cause an individual to use scrolling as a nervous system regulation tool, because that is what's happening when we're mindlessly scrolling, when it feels like we cannot get off that screen. There's a really good reason for that. And part of the nervous system approach is looking at, well, what's the core human need that is actually being met through this behavior right now? Even if it's a low quality way of meeting that core human need, what is it? Right? Because that's going to give us a bit of an inroad to explore what's happening at a deeper level. Um, what are you potentially protecting yourself from? What are you getting to avoid? Um, what are you not having to do that's uncomfortable? And ultimately, what's the subconscious pattern that's playing out here? So we're going to dive in and look at all of that, or an approach to look at all of that as well. And I feel like it could be really useful just to bring us all onto the same page. This is probably really obvious, but sometimes I do find with a behavior like mindless scrolling, it can be more intense at sometimes and subtle at other times. And when it's subtle, that's when we can sometimes have a tendency to sweep things under the rug, when a problem isn't as amplified or it's not feeling as all consuming or as problematic. That's when we can sort of say to ourselves, oh, yeah, like maybe this is actually fine. Maybe I don't need to look at that thing. Maybe I'm actually improving. Maybe it's not as bad as I thought. Maybe I was just having a really bad day, right? And we do ourselves a really big disservice in that because we disconnect from the facts of reality, which are, okay, this might not be happening every day, but it's definitely consistently showing up over, you know, a 1 month, a 3 month, a 6 month period, and interfering with how productive I feel that I am, how present I feel in my life, how much time I have left available in each day to really experience things that light me up inside and that excite me and that move the needle forward on the goals and the things that would make life mean the most to me, a vision that excites me. Yeah. And so when we are in this loop or in this pattern stress response of mindless scrolling, the day becomes rushed because we're running late to places. Yeah. Bedtime's pushed out, so it starts interfering with our sleep. Stress increases. Yeah, we're feeling less fulfillment because we've probably gotten through less things in a day, which means there's more lingering for the next day. Yeah, we're not feeling that sense of achievement or accomplishment, or that maybe we've added a lot of value into the world, ours or those beyond us as well, right? Um, a flow state is interrupted when we go into that scroll. Yeah. And I'm going to talk about all the different reasons why this might be showing up and happening. And we're left with this feeling of almost like fogginess, or that we're like zonked or zombied afterwards. And sometimes, there can even be this experience of like, oh my gosh, like where did that hour go? And then the flow on effect from that is, oh, do I really have time to do that thing I said I was going to do now? And oh, can I really be bothered? I feel like I might need a nap now, right? Because the EMFs as well, and the posture, whether it's just the posture of your hand, but often it is like our neck and our spine as well, from scrolling and holding, and yeah, having this technology skin to skin in our hand, so close to our body for that period of time. There are physical flow-on effects from that. It's also a low quality way to meet our need of connection. And so that can mean we're less inclined or less bothered to make the effort to go out of the home and actually connect with someone in a more intimate, higher quality way, or even make the phone call, right? And all of this, yeah, all of this combined can lead to this state where when we finally do put the phone down because we've come back into our body, right? Some of what happens in that scrolling is there's moments where you're not even aware anymore that that is what is happening. When that awareness comes back in and the scrolling stops, you've then primed yourself to be in this position of conclusive self-talk of, oh, you're so lazy. You still haven't done this thing. How are you still sitting here? Oh, I can't believe I just did that again. Right. And as I said before, physically, we don't feel great after that happens. And so everything becomes more difficult. When I was talking about even from a flow state perspective before and creativity, I'll even notice at times that I want to go and pick up my phone, right? Like I'll have just had a surge of creativity or I'll have been working on a creative project and, maybe it's been an hour or something and I'm like, oh, wonder what's happening on my phone or where's my phone? Or like, I'm like, sometimes it's boredom. I'm like, oh, I'm a bit bored with this task. And I notice that the first thing that I want to do and grab and look at to relieve some of that boredom or to create some relief or a different focus or what is actually being craved there ultimately is maybe, yeah, a break, is my phone can be picked up. And what we get to realize in those moments instead is that we can choose a productive break or a productive shift of focus, right? Like that could be a walk around the block. It could be putting on, and I often do this. These are all examples. So the walk around the block, like it's not nice, but it's not the walk I would actually choose to go on for the purpose of going on a walk, right? But I know that if I get up and I move my body and I get out of my environment and I do that outdoors, that is going to meet my need in one of the highest quality ways possible, right? And ultimately, I'm walking past my neighbors. There's the opportunity to say, hey, exchange a smile, a wave, and yeah, quick loop, and then I can get back into it. One of the things my clients is practicing at the moment, hang on, did I even finish that loop? There was something else I was saying. Oh yeah, music. So I might put on even just like, I might say to myself one song, or I might say 15 minutes, and I just start dancing and moving my body as well. Going and having a glass of water or a piece of fruit, meditating. So many different ways that we can give ourselves relief from doing or being task focused without having to use a screen or without having to scroll. Going to get into more of those tips. But one of the things that my client is practicing at the moment is what we're calling peak performance breaks. So she's learning to trust that even when she's in peak productivity, peak creativity, peak performance, that if she takes a break, she can come back and still access that state. Because one of the reasons in the past she created chronic fatigue, but then also since healing chronic fatigue, it's created still a pattern of burnout. And this is something I had to work through after healing chronic fatigue as well, is that, the adrenaline and the feel good of, yeah, I'm getting this done. I'm getting this done. Oh, I just want to get more done. Look how productive I am. It's all happening, right? And so that mindset or that focus makes it really challenging to disengage and come back when you don't have trust within yourself that you are brilliant. You do have that ability. You can tap into that whenever you want if you're taking really great care of yourself. And so you don't have to sacrifice things like a lunch break or your bedtime or any of these micro little interrupts or breaks that I talked about, like the walk around the block. You don't have to sacrifice your well-being and your self-care to be able to get things done. And so it's been uncomfortable for her at first, but she sent me a message the other day and she said, I went and sat in the garden right in the middle of a time of peak performance and it felt really good. Yeah, it's the road less traveled. It's not the most common way. And people are even looking at me. It feels like people are looking at me a little bit weirdly at times because she's in a work environment. But it's working. She's building trust around this fact that, you don't need to rely on adrenaline to be able to get things done. Yeah. So let's dive into some of these mindset solutions, more mindset category solutions. And I'm going to circle back to where I very first opened this conversation, where I said it's been brewing for a little while. So late last year, I can't remember when exactly, I'd say probably around maybe October or November, Instagram stopped working on my phone, which was a problem because I use it to run my business. And, I was going back and forth with support a little bit. And it just wasn't going anywhere. And there'd been times in the past where I'd really toyed with the idea of, finding a way to not have Instagram on my phone. And one of the thoughts that I'd had was, oh, do I get a second phone? Um, because often what's easiest is to capture in, like, a lot of what I share is part of my lifestyle content, how I'm living what I teach. So when I'm walking on the beach, or when I'm at a picnic with the most beautiful friends and relationships, or when I'm at the farmers markets, or whatever it might be. Yeah. And so I was like, oh, I feel like I'd just end up carrying the two phones the whole time anyway. Like, does that really make sense? So I never really did anything about it. Anyway, last year, of course, I was put in this situation where I needed to come up with something different because it just wasn't working. And so what I started doing was using Instagram only on my iPad and on my laptop. And it was clunky at first. And I knew it was going to be clunky. It was going to take more time, because part of what was happening is, well, one, I was having to getting used to using a bigger screen. And the second was, often I was still filming content on my phone or taking photos on my phone. Not often, always actually. But I was doing it through a different app that wasn't Instagram. I just happened to use Snapchat because I use that. My sister sends me all the videos and photos of my niece and nephew on there so that I can stay in touch with their world most days. So I was like, okay, I can just film in here, download it out. It's in my camera album. And then when I decide that I'm doing Instagram work, I just airdrop it across to my iPad, and then I use it like that. And like I said, it was slow at first. And then interestingly, months later, Instagram started working on my phone again. And that felt more difficult and clunky for me to use because I wasn't used to it. So it did take my neurology and my habits and my automated responses a little bit to shift over and to catch up. But I can tell you, it has been a fucking game changer. No longer is it possible for me to do those little scrolls where maybe I'm in the bathroom, or I'm waiting for my lunch to cook, or I'm just checking my phone right before I turn it off before bed, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, just spent 15 or 20 minutes doing that, which I didn't want to do, because it's just not on there. It has been incredible. And now that it's working on my phone again, there are times where I download it. If I know I'm doing a chunk of filming or something, and if I forget to delete it, it straight away, like, those little pockets of noticing myself on there more than I want to be pop up. So that has been phenomenal. Amazing. Some other things that have been really important. I feel like this is a really obvious one, but like doing an audit of who you follow, how much you follow, what content you're consuming is obviously going to contribute to the felt experience you're having whilst on there. But something I've found really powerful, it's interesting at the moment, like there's actually no one in particular I'm really enjoying watching or following. So for me, it's more that I get on there, I do my work pieces, and I jump off. But normally I would have maybe 4 people that I really enjoy following. So like my business coach would be one of them. Who else? Let me have a little look. Have I got it on my phone? Yes. Logging out is another great one. So, like right now, it's taking me, like, it just took me all that time to be able to log in, which gives you the opportunity to ask yourself or to notice, I'm doing that thing again. Also, asking yourself before you open the app, what am I going on here for? And this is probably more helpful for people that use this for business. I don't use Instagram for, other than for business. But before, when I was planning this podcast episode, and I told you that client story about her peak performance breaks, I knew that she'd shared with me something different that she'd done, which I shared with you was sitting in the garden, but I couldn't remember what it was. And so I logged in to find that information. And before I logged in, I said to myself, what am I going onto this app for? I was like, okay, I'm going in to check the DMs with XYZ. And so then I noticed, I was like, oh, but there's this and there's this and there's this. And that's, what these apps are designed to do, is to steal our attention. But it was a successful mission. I just checked the DM and then I got out again. But oh yeah. So another example is She's on the Money is a podcast I've been listening to, but I'm also reading her books. Her name's Victoria. I can't think of what her surname is. But really, really incredible, easy to digest, what she was called financial literacy, around investing, saving, money habits, all of those sorts of things. So anyway, what I do is I find only, the 1 to 4 that I'm actually wanting to consume, and I have them in my search history. Yeah, this is Instagram specific. And so when I go on, if I want to consume, I go to my search results and those 4 people are there, and I just go and check out their content and then I jump off again. What else have I got here? So my phone chargers. I actually have a really big bedroom. So I put my phone is on the other side of my room. Just because I live on my own and I just prefer at night for my phone to be in my room with me. But my iPad, my laptop, all of that, and at times my phone actually too, are kept in my office. So they're not even in my room. But if my phone is in my room, I definitely cannot reach it from my bed. And I also flight mode my phone in overnight. So that would go on flight mode around 9:30. So there's no internet on there. So again, it's like this extra layer of, if I was to go on and scroll, I'm more likely to notice because I would have to bring my phone off flight mode first. I have no notifications switched on my phone other than WhatsApp, phone calls, and I think SMS, but I don't really use SMS. I really only use WhatsApp. So they're not popping up, but also some people laugh at me for this. My phone is always on Do Not Disturb. Yeah. There might be, because phone calls don't come through on Do Not Disturb, there might be times where I take it off. If I know I'm waiting on a phone call, but that means you get no notifications at all. So that I have found has been an extreme game changer, because it also means there's less reason for you to be prompted or signaled to pick up your phone in the first place. My phone is always on silent. So I'm also not hearing any dings or anything like that. I don't have my work email on my phone either. So again, less reasons to be picking it up when I'm not in work mode. This is an interesting one. I feel like this is maybe a bit quirky. Maybe it's becoming a bit more common, but I don't speak to people on the phone really at all. Like, I just don't do it. I don't like it. I don't feel like I need to. My family that are interstate are probably the main people I speak to on the phone. But I'm connecting with people in person. And also with how full my life is with in-person experiences and adventures, I don't actually have the time to be on the phone to someone for an hour because, if I'm at the farmers markets or if I'm in the sauna or if I'm working or if I'm exercising or if I'm cooking, like I want to be present doing that thing. And often I'm listening to a podcast or I've got music on and I'm dancing. Driving in the car is probably when I do my phone calls. Um, Sometimes walking on the beach. But again, even then, more often than not, I just want to be in the experience of doing that. So again, there's not that, like, I just try and reduce the amount of reasons why I would need to look at or pick up my phone. Um, and I tend to communicate more on voice messages as well. And I think that's where I was going with that because it suits my schedule and my flow better. I don't have to find an hour or two chunk of time to have a conversation with someone. We can connect in little snippets back and forth when both of us have time to be present. Most of the people in my life are living very like intentional, full lives. So there's a bit happening and they like to be present with what they're doing too. And then in terms of a business strategy with Instagram, one of the things I also often use is I will try and share or post something in the morning. Stories, this is because my highest engagement time for posts is in the late afternoon, evening. So I'll try and jump on and post something in the morning, reply to any DMs, maybe do a tiny bit of engagement, post something on my stories. And then that kind of feels squared away for the day until I come back in the late afternoon to do the post, maybe to reply to any more DMs, maybe share some more stories. It just provides this structure around it where I feel like I can like dip in and then dip out and then dip in and dip out. And it just feels cleaner and I know what's happening and there's a plan around it, which means I'm not in this scattered energy or this reactive energy. Um, so there are lots of the mindset types of things that I do, that I look at. I think that covers most of it. Definitely the do not disturb, the flight mode, and not having it in your room. Very, very powerful because what that begins to do is it will begin to build new habits. And one of my favorite things is when I go to use my phone and I can't find it because it's still in the car from when I got home from the shops or something an hour or two ago, or it fell down the couch an hour or two ago and I haven't even noticed. Or in this house, I just always leave my phone accidentally either in one of the walk-in robes or in the laundry. I don't know. I've never lived in a house where I lose my phone. But yeah, it just begins to create this separation, which is all well and good. But if you're needing that scrolling to help calm your nervous system or regulate your nervous system or help you to avoid feelings of overwhelm, help you to avoid feeling isolated or lonely, then those mindset tips and tools are only going to go so far. We need to actually look at and work with what's happening in the nervous system and like the felt experience that you're not comfortable with. And so a distraction is required to become more comfortable. Yeah, I'm not suggesting it creates all this comfort, but more comfortable. And so we really, really need to look at how is this behavior working for me, right? That's going to bring to the surface what it is that you're getting to avoid. Yeah. So how is it working for me that I spend all this time scrolling? Yeah. That I end up in a scroll hole. What do I get to avoid? Right. For some of us, it will be the responsibilities of life that feel really burdensome. Yeah. Uh, Very often, what it is that we're getting to avoid is tiredness and burnout, because that feeling of being present with how tired and burnt out we are, or the thought of what needs to happen to address that state that we're in, which is often a nap, resting, staying home. Yeah. Maybe taking a bath, restorative behaviors or restorative choices, that can feel uncomfortable, right? Because it's, I've definitely experienced in the past when I would get myself to these states where I was really burnt out and I really needed some deep, long, nourishing rest. It was the last thing I felt like doing, because it meant that I was left alone with my thoughts, with my emotions. And if I didn't know how to respond to those and how to address those so that they didn't feel problematic anymore, and I felt really confident in, oh, okay, there's some sadness here, or there's some anxiety here, there's some resistance here. Cool, let me go into that somatic process, find what the piece is, move through it. Oh, okay, now I can exhale. Now I can feel relaxed and calm in my body. Now I can feel at peace in the thoughts that I'm having about myself. I'm actually feeling really compassionate towards that part that was feeling like really cringeworthy, or was really struggling, or was feeling really judgmental, or like I was a bad person, or the noise and the busyness in my head that just wouldn't go away. That's now calmed. And now it feels okay. It feels tolerable to, spend all day soaking up this rest that my body is showing me it absolutely needs. Another way it can be working for us. Yeah, the mindless scroll can be working for us if we're someone who does not consistently schedule breaks into a busy schedule. Yeah. So if we're really poor at making sure there's breaks or moments of relief in a busy schedule, we will use the scroll to create that. Yeah, we will steal 5 minutes here or 10 minutes there, and often it will be overlapped with something that's really important to be present with. And gonna say it, and I'm not gonna pretend like I've never done it either, but like when you're sitting on the toilet, so many women I speak to are struggling with like constipation or digestive issues and, yeah, their bowel movements, because you're not being present with your body and you're stimulating your nervous system by looking at a screen when it's trying to do something completely different. Also, whilst we're eating, yeah, your body requires your presence and requires some stillness to be able to digest. Like, how fast are you eating? Are you actually chewing that food before you swallow it? How shallow are you breathing versus deeply? Right? But if you're not well practiced at sitting in stillness or creating breaks for yourself so that you don't feel like something is always being demanded of you, or you're always on the go, or there's always something and you're being pulled in so many different directions, then it can actually feel really good of like, oh, I'm just going to sit here and scroll on my phone for a minute. Yeah. Even in waiting rooms in between, while you're waiting for an appointment. These are all moments where there are far more high quality ways we can meet our needs instead of mindless scrolling. But we need to be real with what we're trying to avoid first. Yeah. It's always going to be discomfort, whether that is mental, so your thoughts, emotional. Yeah. So whether there's fear, whether there's guilt, whether there's anxiety, whether there's sadness, whether there's grief, whether there's anger, whether there's frustration, or physical. Yeah, like this tiredness or this brain fog that's already there. So, like, I'm not feeling like I've got a sharp mind. So, why not? It's so, so important to look at, right? And often, part of the emotional piece, but the nervous system piece will be there might be something playing out in your current day adult world, and it might consistently be playing out. It might be an environment or an experience that you're consistently having, which could be a relationship, for example, where something unbeknownst to you, so you're not consciously, intellectually aware of it, but something in that current day experience is triggering a past unresolved trauma or emotional event or a limiting belief that's been formed in the past that is being stimulated within the nervous system, that is then just being called everyday stress, or is then, resulting in us feeling really uncomfortable when somebody makes a choice we don't agree with, or they are expressing their emotions in a way that we don't know how to be around, or we don't know how to feel calm around. And that might be because it's quite explosive, but it might also be because they're really comfortable in their expression and they're not needing to please you by hiding how they're really feeling. And so there's a lot to be looked at here. Yeah. And it needs to be identified so that we can include a nervous system healing plan around this coping mechanism of mindless scrolling. And so I'm going to give you a couple of questions that you can go away with, get a little bit more practical with this in terms of discovering what this might be for you, getting curious about what might need to be looked at for you. And so the first question, and I mean, we've kind of already done one question with like, what do I get to avoid, or how is this behavior working for me? But we're going to flip it around, and instead of looking like past focused, or instead of looking at problem focused, let's look at what would become possible for you if you weren't scrolling, right? And so that is the question. What would become possible for you if you weren't mindlessly scrolling? What would be available? Yeah. Is it energy? Because you'd be getting a better quality sleep. Yeah. And you don't have to be pushing out your bedtime to be interfering with your sleep. If you are looking at a screen with blue light in it, that's going to be interfering with your sleep, which then interferes with your energy levels. Are you going to gain more time and more space back into your day? Yeah. Is a sharp mind going to become possible for you? Yeah. Are more loving, compassionate thoughts going to become possible for you because you're not comparing yourself or living in this online world, but you're spending more time in the real world? So instead of hunched over, scrolling, looking at this blue light and perhaps comparing yourself to something or someone that you're seeing on your screen, you've gotten up for 5 minutes and you've gone outdoors into sunlight, into nature. You've moved your body and you've walked around the block, right? And I want you to keep asking yourself, what else? What else? What else? What else would become possible for you if you weren't mindlessly scrolling? And do this from a curious mindset, not a judgmental or self-critical, self-shaming mindset. Yeah. Oh, what else could become possible? What else? And then I want you to take those answers that you've come up with. Yeah, you should have a whole list, and ask yourself, well, then what would become possible for me? Right? Because if I've got more energy, I've got improved sleep, quality sleep, I've got more time and space in my day, my mind is sharp, creativity is flowing. Maybe there's less pain in my body as well. I am having more of a tendency to have more positive thoughts. Well, maybe then exercise becomes possible for me. Maybe starting a business or a new hobby becomes possible for me. Maybe there's space actually for me to have more in-person connection. Maybe there's space for me to spend time and energy and attention on how I could meet some new people and make some new relationships. Maybe there's space left for me to get more strategic about how I can become more independent so I don't have to depend on the people and places and things in my life that I would rather let go of. I don't want to live my life that way anymore. Yeah. Maybe more adventure would become possible for me. Maybe there would be more, like, there would actually be space in my week for me to date myself, for me to spend quality time with myself, right? So I want you to write all of this down as well. And then I want you to ask yourself this. As well as that feeling exciting, yeah, what feels unsafe or scary about having these things? What feels unsafe or scary about having these things? So is it, okay, well, if I started the business or the hobby, I could end up in financial trouble, or maybe I'd be really shit at it and people would laugh at me and I'd be embarrassed. Yeah. If I had more time and space in my day for more connection, I'd actually feel really lonely, or I'd then, I'd be feeling a lot of social anxiety because I'd be in more social settings. And so it's giving you the pieces of what needs to be looked at and what that nervous system healing plan needs to be created around. Hope this has been helpful and useful, and that you're enjoying the blend of, yes, both the practical mindset stuff, but also understanding what's happening at a deeper level beneath the surface too. As always, come and chat to me in my DMs on Instagram about this. I'd love to hear how you found it, what it's brought to the surface for you, and what you're going to be trying that is different around your phone use and scrolling habits. All right, my love.
Thank you for being here for this conversation, my love. If you would like more free resources, if you'd like to learn about my programs or coaching opportunities, you can find all of that information at my website, gemmahanley.com. I'll link it below in the show notes. And if you would like to connect daily, head over and find me on Instagram. My handle there is Gemma E. Hanley, and I reply to all of my DMs there personally. If you enjoyed this episode and found it valuable, please share it with someone. You never know who needs to hear one little thing to take their day from feeling stuck and heavy to light and free. See you on the next one.